So for Esther and me, we were interested in ecofeminism as a kind of convergence, a theoretical framework that kind of brought together feminist concerns and environmental issues. Ecofeminism, we felt, is interested in the imbrications of cultural constructions and natural phenomena. And although there is a real diverse range of ecofeminist positions, we felt that one unifying idea is that the exploitation of nature follows the same logic and as the exploitation of women and other minorities in many instances. So that's how we kind of saw our use of the term ecofeminism as well. We like the fact that a lot of the ecofeminism work that we've encountered is anti-essentialist and also anti-elitist. It seeks to invite a diversity of voices as well, and to hear from people on the ground. And it's not so ensconced in a kind of ivory tower. We felt that ecofeminism seeks to dissolve the binary between nature and culture, or at least to question the way that binary has been set up, as well as the kind of gendered implications of that dichotomy and binary opposition. So we were interested in the relationships between women and nature, as well as between human and non-human. And we felt that ecofeminism does very significant work on that. And so we wanted to continue that conversation or to start that conversation in Singapore. Then as well, we are drawn to ecofeminism for its critique of a kind of hyper-capitalism and the exploitative nature of that hyper-capitalism, which oftentimes doesn't take into account environmental destruction. So that was part of our theoretical understanding of ecofeminism as well. So here, I've just taken a little quote from our introduction, and which explains what we tried to do. So with a focus on a politics of relations, Making Kin contemplates the Singapore woman's place on earth from the perspective of the personal and private, to recenter the woman in the discourse of politics, environment, ecology, and nation. It is our hope that with this anthology, women writers in Singapore may chart a new course on the map of Singapore's literary scene, writing urgently about gender, place, nature, climate change, caregiving, conservation, and other critical environmental issues that they find themselves entangled in and empathetic towards. So that in a nutshell was what we tried to do with this anthology. So I'll begin now giving you a flavor of the different essays. I'll start with an extract from my own essay in the anthology. It's entitled Traveling in Place. And in this essay, I talk about growing up and I suppose growing old now in Chong, where I am. I try to give a sense of how the place has changed. So katong is actually the Javanese word for the leatherback turtle, an endangered creature that was once upon a time a more frequent visitor in local waters. The leatherback is the largest sea turtle in the world, distinctive for not having a hard carapace. A migratory creature, it crisscrosses the vast Pacific Ocean, feeding on jellyfish off the coast of California before nesting and laying its eggs on warm tropical beaches in Southeast Asia. So I talked a little bit about the process of natal homing, how these turtles come back to the place where they were born in order to lay the new generation of eggs, and how scientists think that this is, they have some kind of inner compass that is a result of geomagnetic imprinting, right? And this is a kind of evolutionary trait that has developed over thousands of years. Then I continue by talking about the kind of ghostly trace of the turtle now in Katong. Along East Coast Road, a mural of a giant turtle painted on the side of a shophouse registers the history of the turtle that gives Katong its name. The mural is beside a row of single-story terrace houses where a seawall once stood, at a spot where turtles used to come ashore to lay their eggs. The houses, raised for protection against high tide, now look quaint, their architecture reflective of a different time when the water was closer and before land reclamation in the 1960s pushed the sea further away and altered the island's southeastern coastline. Today, it takes great mental effort to unsee Marine Parade Road, heaving with traffic, and imagine it as where the sea used to meet a wide and flat beach lined with coconut palms. Consider how the first leatherback turtle headed to Katong's beaches to lay its eggs must have felt returning the year after land had been reclaimed from water. Disoriented and doubting its senses, it must have swum mutely on. Land reclamation, oh, I can't see what I'm supposed to read. Land reclamation is, of course, the story of Singapore and our telluric history. The leatherback turtle is just a minor footnote in our quest for ever more terra firma. So that was what my essay in the anthology is about. One of the other essays that I really like in the book is by Constance Singham, and I think many people would be familiar with her as a pioneer of feminism, founding member of AWARE in Singapore. And she's also turned actually to her attention to environmental issues of late. She's now, besides her activist work in feminist and women's organizations, she's also now a children's book writer, and she has actually written a book about entitled "The Birds in the Bamboo Tree," right? And it's about equal parenting. She takes the opportunity to talk about equal parenting and how the boo-boo birds have made a nest and care for their fledglings just outside her flat. So this is an essay actually based on her observations and also, I guess, her meditation on natural surroundings, right? So her essay celebrates nature and trees in particular in her life, as well as how she sees the community building role that gardens and cultivating nature can fulfill. So she says, now when I reflect on my need for a tree and plants, I see the importance of the tree in the backyard of my first home outside my Melbourne apartment, and now in front of the window of my Shun Fu flat. How does one measure something as intangible as emotional well-being or the healing powers of a tree? I do remember in the days of my illness with chronic fatigue and the resultant depression, how my remedy was to drive down Upper Thomson Road. The rich, lush greenery and the spreading branches of the trees there, much of it is gone now, or sitting among trees in Pierce reservoirs would work as instant pick-me-ups. These visits to parks rich with greenery served as spiritual balm during troublesome periods. Hermann Hesse, the German poet and philosopher, in his book Trees, Reflections and Poems, writes that trees are sanctuaries. He says, when we have learned to listen to trees, that is home, that is happiness. They are the key to essential notions of truth, beauty, home, belonging, and happiness. So that's Connie's piece in the anthology. So she and actually we have another AWARE stalwart who contributed her essay, and that's Kawanjit Soin. And interestingly, both women talk a lot about trees as well, the nature, natural surroundings, as well as what they see from nature that they wish, human beings did more of, and that's equal parenting. So they both actually touch upon that subject. Here we have another essay, which is quite different from what I've read so far. It's written by a friend of mine called Chu Ka-ying, who is the mother of a non-verbal autistic young man, I suppose, no longer a boy. And it's a remarkable essay about her love for her autistic son, which leads her to take a step some would call counterintuitive, or even, quite unmaternal, because she moves him from Singapore to Bali, where he is now, where he could be more at one with the natural surroundings, but also because she found it very difficult to parent him as he grew older, and he would get violent sometimes, and frustrated, and turn violent towards her. So she felt a need to find a way to help him. And moving to a more rural and natural environment certainly helped him to thrive and become more independent. So she moved him from Singapore to Bali. So this is an essay about motherhood, about letting go. And in fact, what she has done is also make kin across national boundaries, because she didn't know anybody in Bali when she moved him there. And it was really, I guess, really good fortune and a blessing now that she has found someone to take care of him, and that he has found a family in Bali. So some of the ideas that she touches on include, the difficulty of our urban environment for autistic people. Not just ordinary people who might be stressed by the urban environment, but using the example of her son, she shows that quite clearly. And also something that perhaps we never think of, some of the struggles that single mothers face, and when their children become violent and might hurt the caregiver. So these are some issues that are raised in her essay. And just also quite sad, because of COVID, she has not been able to see him in the flesh for nearly more than 2 years now, although they they still Zoom call every day. Okay, so the start of Ka-ying's essay. It was a spell-binding sight. I had never seen Sebastian, my then 14-year-old autistic son, so still, so quiet. He had become one with the dark water lapping around him, the quietness of the night air, as well as the moon and the stars shining in the sky. I was transfixed. This was how Sebastian could be, living in a natural environment, unblemished by the noise and chaos of urban existence. For a change, Sebastian seemed to be home. I could see that this was where his being was most at peace. I was both elated and sad. Elated that he was experiencing such a peaceful state of being, and sad because it was fleeting and rare. If only this moment could last forever, Sebastian would be able to stay in this optimal state permanently. This special night took place back in April 2010, when Jerome, my now husband, Sebastian and I were enjoying a 5-day holiday on the islands near Krakatau. What distinguishes this holiday from all others is the fact that we were far removed from civilization. The experience was so alien to me that it had taken me a few minutes of floating on the surface of the ocean to realize what was so different. There were no sounds of motor vehicles. All one could hear was the gentle lapping sounds of the ocean. So that's Ka-ying's essay. The next, I just have 2 more essays to introduce. The next essay is written by Serena Raman, who is a visiting fellow at the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, Yusof Ishak. Right, so she's her work focuses a lot on conservation and sustainable development and environmental protection. So in this essay, she's actually talking about her community efforts in a place called Mukim Tanjung Kupang in Johor, where she is based. And she in the essay, she writes about the difficulty of working in a rural fishing community, and she describes very beautifully the habitat there of seagrass meadows. And actually, Serena was one of the first to tell us that she was not so comfortable with the idea of ecofeminism, because one of the things that she mentioned is that she found it very difficult to work with the women, especially in the rural community. But you know, we were explaining to her that yeah, I mean, it's a reality that, you know, women are not all the same, and we have issues, we have problems with each other. But overall, we felt that her community building work and her attempts to improve the lives of the women as well as others fitted the bill very well. So this is Serena's essay. While the common assumption is that rural communities are in tune with nature and inflict less damage on it, the reality can sometimes be quite the opposite. With easy access to disposable goods, rural and poorer communities tend to purchase cheap, flimsy, or single-use goods, then opt to spend more on long-lasting quality items. Rural areas in Malaysia often do not have waste collection services, so people either burn or bury their rubbish, or for coastal communities, toss it into rivers and seas. Some of these practices may be left over from generational habits when items were naturally sourced and biodegradable. The proliferation of plastic now results in ecological disaster. There is a disconnect between personal action and subsequent consequences on natural habitats and thereafter livelihoods and incomes. This is a fishing community that depends on clean and healthy ecosystems to bring back a good catch. Yet they cannot seem to understand that their dumping waste into the waterways will have a negative impact on the fish they bring home. When asked about this, the standard response is that no one is doing anything about big business and developers who are polluting their waters, destroying coastlines and burying vital natural habitats. So why go after them? Right, so her essay actually recounts quite movingly how she eventually, you know, manages to integrate with the community. I mean, of course, that she also talks about the difficulties, but she's still there now, and I think that she's done a really wonderful job in terms of community building. And the last essay I have for you today is also the last essay of the collection. It's by Diana Rahim, who is a writer and a visual artist. In this essay, she writes about her family's minyak lam, which I understand to be a kind of traditional medicine, kind of ancestral oil that's made by her moyang, or her great-grandmother, who learned it from her mother, who learned it from her mother, right? So it passes down through the women in the family. And no men have been, you know, involved in the making of this oil. So it's a what she calls a precious matrilineal heirloom. So one ingredient in this oil is the leaves from the neem plant, right? And it's naturally made. It's used for if you have a bruise, if you have a tummy ache, and all kinds of ailments, including if you have an outbreak of pimples. And in this essay, Diana talks about how her mother, her great-grandmother would sell this oil from door to door in her HDB block of flats, and that money, you know, she contributed towards the household by doing so. And the essay really spoke to Esther and me when we were editing the collection, because it emphasizes the importance of indigenous knowledge, the passing down of family medicine, and we felt that it was something that we never really think about so much, and we know very little about it. So we really liked Diana's essay. With the 70s and 80s, however, came the clearing of kampong settlements and a rapidly modernizing Singapore. The country was radically changing its face, and the relationship that people had with the land was increasingly regulated. From her kampong in Sembawang, my moyang moved to a small flat in Marsiling. Foraging for leaves was no longer possible, as massive amounts of trees were cleared and the plants became harder and harder to find. She didn't own any plot of land in Singapore where she could grow these leaves, and it would have been illegal to grow them in a random public plot in a field or neighborhood, unlike in her home village in Tenkara, which is in Malacca. As faith and dependence on evidence-based Western medicine grew, bolstered by its ability to be specific down to its very chemical description, traditional medicine suffered the image of being unreliable, outdated, backward, or potential scams for gullible people looking for a quick fix. It was the era of the tangible, the proven, and the real. Religion itself seemed to turn coarser at the edges, with evangelical fervor making its entrance at the time. Even spirituality, it seems, had to change its face in response to a new ideological mainstream. So Diana's essay talks a lot about the changes in Singapore through the eyes of watching her great-grandmother make this oil, sell it, and try and pass it down to other members in the family. And her title, Liquid Emerald, is really wonderful because that's how she sees the oil and how it's, it has some kind of talismanic quality as well. It used to be in glass bottles, and then, the shift was towards plastic bottles, right? But it's beautifully written, and it's a kind of like tribute to the women in her family as well. So I've read from about 5 essays, and I hope you have a sense of what Making Kin is about. So we have 18 essays, and I hope you will pick up the book if you haven't already seen it, and let me know what you think. Right. So thank you very much, everyone. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have and to open and have a discussion now. Thank you.